Hey everyone, it's Helen from SMB Deal Hunter. Today we have Jordan Evans with us, an acquisition entrepreneur who is executing a roll-up in the language services industry. He's done, I think, 5 acquisitions to date, more to come, and super, super excited to hear Jordan's story and journey. Jordan, it's great to have you on today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I love the sharing in this community of people's stories.
Jordan, tell us about your background first. How did you get into this space of buying businesses? What were you doing before, and kind of what led you here?
Yeah, my story is slipping and falling into it, and then picking myself up and finding I landed in a great spot. Uh, Similar to you, had a background in startups and tech, and I'm on the West Coast of the United States. That's a great industry to be in. I want to say I had three, four, maybe five, either startups or side projects that didn't get traction on. The one that I did mention was a startup in Seattle. We were acquired by Booking.com, and I was on the sales side of the house. And that was a great experience being acquired and then working for Booking.com for about a year and a half. And then ultimately at the next startup, I was let go by the CEO, and that was a great kick in the butt because I knew I always wanted to do my own thing as an entrepreneur. Um, and I started consulting with my family, my parents, who had this small 4-person, 700,000 in revenue translation company. Uh, I never thought I would join or participate in the family business, but at that time, they had 30 years of doing what they were doing. And I saw a great opportunity to grow and help them retire. And that's really how I slipped and fell into this path I'm on now, which is buying and building a language services company globally. And you're right, we've done quite a few acquisitions and are building a cookbook on how to uh, and kind of forklift them into our operating model while not losing all the goodwill that the company already has.
I'm curious with, I guess, pre even getting into the space, how did you decide, you weren't going to keep pursuing additional side projects or joining another startup? How did you decide, like, you wanted to go buy an existing business? What was kind of the impetus around that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, do you want to live off of ramen? Do you want to live off of steak? So that's always a good signal or path to follow is where you're getting traction. So a number of those side projects just were not going to ramp fast enough, or maybe it was my ADHD of getting distracted by the next thing that could be bigger. That was the downfall. But I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and do my own thing from an early age. Selling donuts on the street corner, right, with my sister. Um, it was just a matter of where are you going to find traction. And for a while, I thought the startup model was the model. Go raise funds, try and build something, figure out product market fit, raise more funds, build a team, and you're having to do that with a lot of moving parts and a high failure rate. Uh, so I slipped and fell, to be honest. Seeing my parents, nice little business, been around for 30 years. They kept it at a level that fit their lifestyle. But pairing that with the growth mindset from the startup, it was like this beautiful merger of like nascent, good bones service business with like this growth mindset, iterate, adopt technology. And so that's where I saw the opportunity of buy and build, because there's a lot of these similar companies to Language Network out there, and we could kind of give them a overhaul and add value that way. That
What
was like the impetus. It wasn't like I woke up one day with this master investment thesis and operating plan. It's been iterative.
Yeah, and I guess with your parents' business, how did they get into it? Tell us more about the business. I don't think I know anything about this world of language services. And you mentioned it's bigger than the music industry. I like your biggest industry nobody's ever heard of. So yeah, I'd love to hear more. How did they get into it? Like, what is the business itself? What do they do?
Yeah, happy to talk about it. It's such a fascinating industry. It's everywhere but nowhere. And you're right, it's bigger than the global music industry, dollar for dollar, and it's growing 7 to 10%, depending on who you ask year over year. Language services, not just human, it's tech as well. And it touches every avenue, right? Spoken word, written word, sign language, voiceover. So everyone every day interacts with our industry, but we just don't think of it as its own industry. Sometimes we think of it as a feature in a software app, or it's just a part of multimedia and streaming your favorite Netflix, but there's a whole industry behind it that makes that stuff happen. So we're like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, pulling all the levers. It's
What
it's large largely it's largely been kind of a technician's business where somebody is a translator that studied and picked up a few needs locally, like the local healthcare clinic or the law firm, and then it snowballed from there. So there's a lot of small, medium-sized language solutions companies that started with, we have this like core competency in these couple languages, and let's start offering services. So similar to like maybe a bookkeeping, CPA, law firm type industry. It's a professional services category.
and when your parents were running it for, they've been running it for 30 years, what kind of, I guess, who were their clients, and was it translating for also, the local law firms and health clinics, or what did that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So early days would have been the 1980s. And this industry was less recognized back then, less professionalized, less credentialized. And so fast forward to today, we have a lot of laws, especially in the US and now recently in the EU, about language access. So people, it's a civil right to not be discriminated against, and language is a critical one. So if you speak Mandarin, or you speak Spanish or Tagalog, and you go into a hospital, they're mandated to provide care in a language you understand. So that's a big driver. Also, law firms and courts. So when my parents started out, it was schools, it was law firms, and it was courts. It was some local businesses that were doing international. They had some marketing material or contracts, and it grows from there. It was a greater LA, which is a very diverse and global geography to have this type of business.
And I'm guessing there's a lot of repeat with these businesses kind of leveraging the same translation services over and over again. I'm guessing,
That's
is that
right. That's what makes this a wonderful industry. And if you probably go read that book, gosh, Royce Udikoff and I forget his other partner, the Harvard Business Guide on How to Buy a Small Business, which it should be like more of like a medium-sized business.
yeah.
What we're talking about is micro and relative to what they say a small business is. Gosh, I forgot the question. We were
No, you answered it. Just kind of like, is there a lot of repeat in that industry, which it seems like it
yeah.
just naturally lends itself to that.
Right. Yeah, the connection was they encourage you to look for a business that has a reoccurring, repeating, and similar to software as a service, which is like the ultimate contracted repeating revenue. Language services is highly reoccurring, whether it's monthly or whether it comes again, the next year. If you think about a hospital, it's planted in the middle of downtown LA, and they've got XYZ population in 13 different languages. Unless everyone moves out overnight, they're going to continue to have those needs every day, every month.
And is it mostly in-person types of service? Is it mostly in person versus online? How does that work?
Yeah. So the industry is everywhere, right? So it's in person, it's remote, it's machine and AI powered, it's human powered, a mixture of both. Our business grew out of this on-site, and a lot of these smaller businesses that are more regional offer less tech forward solutions. So on-site interpretation, maybe phone, maybe simple document translation. That's where it started. Where we've grown is we've gotten a lot more complex. We've added a lot of technology. So we do video remote for telehealth and phone. COVID was a big moment where people realized we can do life remotely. And so we just went online with more of the volume than on site.
That's so interesting. Yeah, eager to dive in more on that later, but guess before you continue, how did you approach your parents? You know, was it always like you knew it was going to happen, or you know, they wanted you to take over the business? Did you guys talk about it before, or how did you end up actually making that happen? How did you? It's hard when it's your parents. Like, how did you structure the deal with your parents? And yeah, what did that conversation look like?
Yeah, it was a multiple conversations, and family and business can be a really challenging thing. It's even when you love and have a lot of trust. And I'd say in our case, it went as good as it ever could have. It was a great deal for them. In hindsight, I paid way too much, uh, but it got us going and snowballing. And if you operate it well, you can make up for it. I don't recommend overpaying, but in this case, it's hard to negotiate against yourself, knowing that it's my parents. So I think we structured it very well. The evolution was I don't expect anything to be handed to me, nor do I want to. And I saw a lot of changes that we need to make in the company, and it would add too much stress and family strife if the cap table, the shareholders had more people involved. And so it was better for me to just clean cut, buy the company. You guys get a known figure and can be excited about that and go pivot to retirement, and we can roll up our sleeves and get to work. Fortunately, I did have some good mentorship. Actually, my CFO was a mentor to me just locally, and had done M&A and stuff like that in the past. So I attribute a lot of the success to the books I read, and then my CFO, who wasn't on board at that time. Eventually, he said, "This looks like too much fun. Like, let's work together." So yeah, it was truly slipping and falling into it. It was like, how can I help them while achieving my own professional goals? And buying the business was the solution.
I love that. And I guess with it being from your parents, it's interesting because you read all these like the books, the Buy Then Build, the HBR Guide to Buying Small Business, but I think none of them really talking about buying a business from your own family member.
Yeah.
How did you, I guess, in terms of like talk through how you financed the deal, I guess. Was it seller financed? Did you leverage like an SBA loan? How did you navigate that?
Sure. I mean, this is what's amazing about businesses is there's so many different paths to structuring a win-win. There's also a lot of paths to structure really stupid deals. So um, I think reflect on this one, like, yeah, the price was too much, but the terms are fantastic. So we're able to structure this without third-party financing. So seller note, and then own equity. And then, gosh, what did we do? We did a period of time where they were consulting, and we were able to have them as like a W-2 participant in the business. And so those were kind of the three pieces. And when you have high trust and you can tax plan together, like spreading things out over a longer period of time, we got SBA level amortization. So it makes things a lot more cushioned. You can make a lot more mistakes and still recover, which I will say, Helen, even though I knew them and knew the business, the first year we lost the largest customer. I didn't realize that it was like a third of the business, that it was hidden. That was through a lot of law firms. It was an insurance company. And
Wow.
so had to replace that. Went to work hard to find new revenue and grow the company, so that way we're not in a difficult position. But looking back on it, would I do the deal again? Gosh, probably not this price, but I was all in, for my own, entrepreneurial bug, and then for my family's benefit. So if anything, it lit a huge fire that like failure is not an option.
Yeah, and I mean the trust element is massive here because I think that's the biggest risk when you're buying a business is like, is the seller actually a good person? And is he going to like, is he telling me
Mhm,
the truth? And is he going to
mhm.
be around to transition the business properly?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
it's such a big question mark. And in your case, you basically eliminated that, which is amazing.
It's hard to do a good deal with bad people. I mean, even if you sign contracts and structure it, it's really emotionally aggravating. And I speak from experience on that one. And we've done deals with great people and then others that are just okay. And then you realize that they're not very good people and you go, oh shit, we got to figure out a way to make everything work. And so, yeah, high trust is great. And the chemistry between buyer and seller is so important. And if you can develop that, then you can create a deal that is not a boring down the middle that everyone thinks is SBA 7A loan. I, like we can actually put something together that's a real win-win. Um, I'd rather pay the sellers more money than, third party bank.
No, absolutely. And what, yeah, I guess how did you conduct diligence then on this deal? You know, I guess you were probably pretty close to the business your whole life, but um, yeah, how did you navigate that?
Sure. This one also is unique in that I was already consulting with them, and that was the beginning of it. It's like they were burnt out, they were losing some customers, they needed somebody to give a sales and marketing strategy and shore up things, uh, and also looking at their rates and their pricing and margins. So I was already consulting for a period of time, and I felt very comfortable. Like the financials, the all the operational data. So this one is probably not the best one to answer that question, but we've since done uh, multiple other acquisitions, and we've developed a checklist, if you will, of all the things we need to look at. And it's kind of a few key buckets: commercial, like where's the revenue and the contracts, where's the revenue stream, make sure that's durable or identify the risks. And then there's people, and that they walk out the door every night, they have attitudes, they have hopes and dreams, like feel comfortable with the people situation. And then finally there's all the financial legal components, which is like you need to understand that absolutely. um, and there's a lot of games that could be played there, especially in small business. But those are like the three buckets, at least in my industry. Sometimes there's a technical piece depending on the company, if they have their own software or solutions.
And
Um,
when you're referring to
yeah,
people, you know, are you referring to the employees, the owners? Like, what is that referring to?
yeah, people is the team and the know-how. You don't know how much is of that revenue piece that we talked about might be tied to critical people and critical know-how. And so it's really important to try and understand that. And I have learned that you can only understand it so much, and then you really know once you buy it. So
So true.
uh, yeah, in diligence, you get into a place of like acceptable risk, but you can't get to a place of 100%. No risk, no possibility for surprise.
No, that makes sense. And I guess it's you basically were able to trial the business effectively, which is why the diligence probably was not as needed, which is amazing. Um,
Yeah.
with that first business, you mentioned, you know, first year you lost largest customer. What did that look like? You know, what was your first year like? What was the first 90 days like? Um, and what were you focusing on? And ultimately, maybe this is the second part of the question. At what point, you know, after taking over the business, were you like, I'm gonna go buy more?
Sure. This is from the perspective I knew I was going to be operating, and I'm rolling up my sleeves. And if you're doing especially a small deal, you look around, you're like, who's going to figure the problems out? It's if you don't see anyone, it's you. You should be ready for that. Otherwise, don't sign up for this path. Um, so this was my area of entrepreneurship and startups too. It's like the commercial side, the sales and marketing. So I felt comfortable enough to just get out there and pound pavement and literally get in a car and show up with a box of donuts or pan dulce. It was just Mexican sweetbread and meet current clients, try and penetrate more, get more volume from them. Um, Immediately looking for lookalike clients. So who's our best core segments, and where do the other animals live? And I need to go gather them. Um,
You're talking like we're
met
running Facebook ads. I love that. Lookalike
Yeah,
clients.
yeah, there's nothing new under the sun, right? It's like, who's our best customers? Let's go get more of them and let's make sure it's profitable. And so that's what we did, is like increase rates, add new logos, get more volume from current customers. So we were able to double it in size in the 12 months. So that 700, even losing the 200 to 1.4, just from getting out and hustling, not changing any of the core processes really. Um, we got to that at some point. There was paper involved. There was a server on site. It was not set up for remote work. So we overhauled the operations as well. But the first priority was the commercial, make sure that we got the cash to keep the lights on.
I mean, that's incredible that, I mean, I think a lot of people would say like losing the largest customer would be like the end of them. And instead, you actually, double the business in the first 12 months. That's insane. And increasing rates, that's interesting. Did you notice that they were sort of undercharging, or what was the situation there? Because that's kind of a common theme across small business acquisition. So
Yeah, pricing is such a delicate thing. I think we care about it. And when I say we, the business owner or the entrepreneur, or we just know what we know. And we've kind of put a box around what we can charge rather than testing how much will the market bear. And so you just start moving them up until you start getting feedback. And didn't get any feedback. So it's like, gosh, we could go a little further. And in fact, undervaluing like what we actually provide to people is we help people operate with accuracy and compliance in these foreign cultural moments that either can be litigious. Unfortunately, there's huge downside. You think of like a life science pharmaceutical company, if they have a mistranslation on the side effects or the instructions on how to use the product, and there could be huge consequences. So the the cost of an accurate translation is, there's high value there. So that was the discovery of like understanding what the market will bear, introducing different rate sheets for different segments and services. And I would still say that's probably the easiest place any small business, no matter your industry, you change things overnight, is like spend some time trying to optimize your pricing strategy, and how can you get people to spend more, how can you add more value and increase the order size.
that
um,
makes sense. And no, that makes a lot of sense. And were you going to past customers and asking for price increases, or were you just, was it just new customers that were getting these new rates?
it was both. It was everyone. And um, you know, I at that time, even I'm sharing lessons that I've learned, fast forwarding after doing this for many years, is at that time I probably wasn't even pushing as far as we could of what people would pay us. I was still fearful. I didn't want to see anyone else leave or give us less volume for moving the rates up. So that's really, I think, the big blocker for a lot of business owners or operators. You asked a question earlier too. When did I start looking for the next acquisition
Yeah.
while doing all of this?
Did you always know that you wanted to kind of, execute on this roll-up strategy? Was that sort of something that was maybe like on the back of your mind, or like at what point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the middle of all this, like this is a lot of work, and trying to double it with hand-to-hand combat. It was just me on the sales team. And I mean, there's probably a bit more peaceful metaphors to use, but we'll stick with like the violent one. But um, it was in the middle of that. It had taken me like maybe a year to negotiate the buyout with my parents. And that's like with people I know and trust, and they know and trust me. So that was frustratingly slow. So I knew in the middle of that, like, gosh, I wonder if there's another one I can do this again. And I'm just going to keep my eyes open uh, and not say no, but I'm also not going to jump in and say, this is my path. So I had a bipolar approach to it where it was like, let's start looking online, let's start talking to brokers and see what we can get in the net. And fortunately, I found an opportunity in Washington State where I used to live in Seattle. And it was like very similar. It was like the same business, but in Washington State. And that made me feel really comfortable to keep walking down the path. And I figured, uh, let's go until I hit a door and I can't get through the door. And maybe that will be the signal to not do this acquisition. And fortunately, we transacted that one, I want to say maybe a year and a half, so 18 months after buying the first. And so that took maybe 9, 10 months to negotiate from start to finish. So the timeline is like jumped in a language network, around 9 to 10 months, start negotiating. And then now I've got two businesses and more people and more problems, but more opportunity.
And how did you finance the second transaction?
That one, we used the beautiful SBA 7A program here in the US. And that's a fantastic program. It's a lot of work and a lot of extra scrutiny. But for businesses that otherwise wouldn't be financeable, it's a service business, no hard assets, no hard collateral. I highly recommend that route. And so we use that to do the next deal. However, Helen, I had another path negotiated with the seller where she would sell or finance the whole thing.
Wow.
But she wanted 3.5 year pay
Mm.
down. And it's just way too tight. Like we want cushion if any client leaves. So the SBA having that at a 10 year helps everyone sleep a little bit better, even though you pay more for that financing.
And did you leverage the expansion loan or did you?
No. We brought equity to the table, and we weren't able to do. I think you're referencing like a 0% equity situation. Yeah,
Yeah,
that wasn't even on our radar. Bank was not promoting that. Nobody was talking about that.
got it. And how did you, I guess like, 18 months later after the first business, how are you operating two businesses in two different states? How did you navigate that? And did you integrate them? What did that look like?
I was getting my ass on a plane and spending half the month in Seattle and half the month down here in California. And uh, it was a very interesting time. This is the first one. And the plan was to integrate operations, same systems, reduce complexity, and do the same thing that we did in greater LA. Is start visiting clients, seeing where we can increase the rates, what other services can we provide. And I felt very comfortable with the team up there. A lot of them have been doing it for almost 20 years. And I felt that the owner was removed enough that it wouldn't be such a hard transition if I was only there twice a month. And they had an office. And ultimately we went remote. So we made a lot of changes, but early days, a lot on me in rolling up my sleeves. And these are small deals. So we doubled organically. We did this acquisition in Washington. We doubled again. And just a fantastic growth trajectory.
The second business, did you double that business as well in a pretty short period of time? When you say doubled again, are you referring to basically like now both businesses were doubling effectively?
Yeah, this thing started compounding really beautifully and faster than I could have forecast. I laugh now back at the forecasts I had made. When thinking about doing the acquisition, they're very conservative, which is I highly recommend. But the upside of moving rates up, implementing software systems, making sure clients are happy, and if not, finding a way to make them happy and increase their volume. I mean, this became the secret sauce requiring work, but you once you do it once, you get better, you do it again. So the doubling was Language Network doubled organically, bought the second company, doubled inorganically, and then was able to not double all of that organically again. I'd say about 35% organic the next year. And then we did another acquisition, and that was a bigger acquisition. So we doubled in size again. So it becomes a flywheel with these roll-ups if you know how to operate them and can kind of create an edge that way. I highly recommend this path. There's a lot of really nice services businesses you could do the same thing that I've done.
That's super interesting. With the second deal, I mean, given that you had been running effectively the same business, just a different geo, I'm sure you were also able to diligence the deal a lot better. Um, I know you kind of brought up the three key things you look for, but was there anything specific that, jumped out at you when you were buying that second business, now that you've already been operating the first one?
Sure. So when doing a roll-up, you can look at it in several ways. Is this just a geographic expansion, or is this some sort of new service line, strategic expansion I can cross-sell to all the other customers? And so these examples were just geographic. They're very similar, and that made it easier to manage at this size and scale. I wasn't introducing too many elements too soon. So that I think was also going in favor, and that's how we had success. It wasn't until acquisition 3 or 4 where we started looking a little more outside the box at other services that we could introduce and then sell to everyone else, and started going a little more outside of what our defined strike zone is. But it fundamentally goes down to what can I get cash flow wise, what can I get capabilities wise. And then, of course, the clients and contracts. So the 3 C's is what we look for. And then on diligence, it's similar. Like people, look at the clients, look at the tech, and of course, make sure everything's on the up and up financially, legally with that entity.
That makes sense. At what point did you guys go remote?
Well, I'm in Santa Barbara, and Language Network was in Riverside, Redlands, Inland Empire. Like I say, LA, but that's very generous. Uh, it's not a nice place, and I did not want to be down there. So I forced Language Network into remote, and that was a nice transition. Using tools like Slack and doing Google Meet, and getting off of the server onto a software as a service project management tool, QuickBooks Online. So now nothing is dependent on physical location. Then COVID happened, and we were already in the process on the second one. So that was a good forcing event. And we were in the process already of doing what we had just done with Language Network. So same system, same tools, we have the IT support that helps us make the migrations. Not a good fit for everyone. That's the other thing, Helen, is some people will churn out on the team.
I was going to ask,
Then,
how do the employees take it?
yeah, some of them absolutely love it. They say you gave me more time in my life. I don't have to commute. I'm more flexible with family and life, but we're a service business, and it's a white collar service. So it's a different situation than having to go change oil, right? Physically, blue collar work, or doing home services, changing I don't know, HVAC systems. So it lends itself nicely to what we were doing. Some people they need the structure of going to an office for productivity, and just didn't have the right personality trait to work well, and it was too much alone. And so for those people, they self-selected out, or for some other people, it was a performance conversation. And this is where we discover the next part of our playbook, which was let's hire people that after they leave with people in Argentina. And
Yeah,
now we have
tell me more about that. I know you mentioned offshoring briefly, before we even started the episode, but yeah, tell me about that. I'm super curious. I've done it myself, and I'm super curious how you've been
Yeah.
leveraging your offshore talent.
Yeah, similar to the pricing conversation we're having, where you don't know what's possible until you start like jumping in and testing it out. Um, so I had hired an expat from the US, uh, born and raised, educated in the US, and then was living in Argentina. And somebody had connected me with her uh, early on. And so she was our first trial run. And it was a US citizen working remotely to work with us, but paid at a level that was comparable to where they are in the world, not if they were in LA. And that worked out beautifully, like incredibly motivated. The position was head and shoulders above what they could have gotten locally in Argentina. And that was when the light bulb went off. It's like, gosh, I wonder if there's more amazing people out there that we're missing out on. And now that we're not in an office, we can expand the geography of hiring. So we just iterated again. I had somebody great in Argentina. It happens to be a fantastic place. A little less now with like the massive inflation this in 2024, 2023, but high education, high English, similar time zones. And so we just kept going with that. And we've built out 50% of our team is global, not just in Argentina. So we've expanded to other countries. But any role like controller, project manager, sales and marketing manager, I mean, unless they have to physically be here, I mean, there's a mind and a talent out there in the world that's ready to join your organization. Uh, and what it does, I guess, for morale and retention, but also for the financials of paying a third or sometimes a half of what a US equivalent would. It's that adds a lot of momentum to your flywheel to further go out and buy more businesses, be able to really improve the labor spend.
I love that you went and I think a lot of folks they'll offshore the easy things, to offshore the customer service. But the fact that you went and offshored even like a controller role, marketing manager, all of those things, that's pretty incredible. How did you connect with this talent and how do you still continue to source them? Is it through recruiter? Do you guys do it internally?
Great question. So originally it started self-source, and then we said, "Gosh, I keep talking about this with other people in my network, and they say, well, can you help us find somebody too?" So having a team down there and then having a recruiter that we hired internally to help us build, we started offering the service to other people, and we launched a side business called Hire Globo. And we do exactly what we did for Language Network. So it was an internal team that we spun off and help other people find, recruit, and hire. And I think this is quite in vogue. But I'd like to say we were doing it before it was like in the mainstream.
I mean,
People have been,
you were also doing it yourself, which is cool. You weren't just offering the service. You were actually seeing success with it, which um I love, and I'll definitely be hitting you up more.
yeah,
Um that's great. And yeah, I mean the cost savings is insane. And I think what I found is a lot of the folks who are abroad in maybe lower cost of living places where this is like a really great income are just like they're so thankful for the opportunity. It's like it's insane. It's very different.
yeah, and it's an incredible time we live in because the big corporations have been offshoring forever, but now we can do it. And you can be a team of one and have a fantastic team overseas and be able to economically afford it. You don't have to go plop and set up a call center and business there. Like you said, uh, US dollar is very strong, so it's quite compelling for people to get paid that way. And then also retention is fantastic, uh, just because it is such a strong opportunity for the team member you hire. So I'm all in on it. Not that I'm anti-US or hiring domestically. It's just you should hire the best absolute person you can get for the budget for your company. hands down. And it's good for your company. It's good for the people you hire. So why not?
I mean, especially for a small business where you have to service debt on that acquisition,
Mhm.
it's a buffer for you. So, um,
Yes, we like cushion. We like to sleep well at night. So this gives the extra cushion.
give me some examples of folks that you've hired for your team, I guess across, you mentioned controller, you mentioned marketing manager, um, any sort of like more, I guess the business, actually, before even getting into that, what were acquisitions 3, 4, 5? And you mentioned getting into, not just on-site types of translation services. Did that also kind of impact, being able to better leverage sort of offshore talent?
Yeah, so we have a huge network of linguists, especially for the on-site. Uh, I could be off a couple hundred plus or minus, but 3,000 plus active vetted linguists that we will match with the appropriate need, time and place and medium. And so that matchmaking is software and people. And so we're able to do that anywhere. The further acquisitions, we were looking at more multimedia and looking at going into larger enterprise type client base, not just government and social and healthcare. So we have quite a few international brands that you would recognize where they sell their products in 17 countries, all of the marketing material, website, YouTube, video, voiceover. They need that localized uh, accurately and on the timeline that they need. So we acquired some companies in those spaces to round out our service offering. Um, and all of these compound. So like you do the third deal that gives you some credibility, and I'm very involved in this industry. So I go to all the conferences, I try and speak and share my learnings, and you build trust and a brand, and that helps with deal flow in the future and credibility. And so I attribute some of these movements into new space or verticals to that of just being an operator and being playing the long game. I don't have an exit planned in 3 to 5 years. Genuinely love this space, and I think that transmutes to people. It makes us an interesting buyer if somebody's wanting to exit.
That definitely makes sense, especially when, I think a lot of sellers are really allergic to the private equities. Um, This is such a more
Yeah.
like natural fit for a lot of folks who maybe aren't just chasing dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe a message for your audience is like, oh, I know that a lot of people like to put venture and partnership and capital behind their name to come across as like a more sophisticated buyer, but there's so much that we miss that's people to people in this process and getting standing out with the seller uh, that I encourage people to have more of a person to person approach.
That's great advice. And would you say that the acquisitions got easier with each additional one as you built more trust um obviously being an operator in the space already, I'm assuming it's a lot easier to buy than just your very first one where you're maybe like coming out of a corporate 9 to 5. Did you really feel that?
Amazingly, yes and no. That it's not my first rodeo, and I've gotten a lot of painful lessons along the way. But for the sellers, it's still their first time, maybe only time selling something, and so there's I wouldn't say it's easier, but um, it does add a lot of confidence when we can say we've done this before. You can talk to the people that we did this before with, and that's just a huge advantage that we have.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And for the some you mentioned for the third acquisition, it was a lot bigger. How did you finance that transaction? How are you thinking of, you mentioned you have a couple deals, even now they're under contract. You're just continuing to make additional acquisitions. How are you thinking of financing all these additional ones in the future? Are you still leveraging an SBA loan? What are you doing now?
Yeah, good question. And you, if you operate well, like meaning that we operate to a budget, that I don't get out of balance, that we have a bottom line number we need to hit. Let's not go gung ho on like building the top line number. You keep playing the game. As long as there's cash flow, you can keep reallocating it. And for me, at my stage in life, I see a longer game to play to keep putting that capital to work, the cash flow, rather than go take it out as a distribution or do something silly and just spend it. I mean, I have a great lifestyle. This is a fantastic path to build wealth for anybody, but I keep compounding. So to answer your question, how do we do these bolt-on deals? We put away a treasure trove of dry powder to do deals, and we look until we find the right one. Like we've gone through a dry spell. Dry spell is like, it's been 20 months since we did the last acquisition, and not that we haven't tried, but just nothing has made sense. And so then after a year of working on it, all of these kind of come together, and so we've got quite a few that we're trying to close by the end of this year. It's November 15th. It'll be an
Wow.
exciting year. Some of it is seller note, some of it is equity, some of it is 7A. So it just depends on the deal. And also the preferences of the seller. I find that if you really understand what they're trying to do and you can build the relationship, this like idea of I need all cash and top dollar at close is just a lot of brokers put that out there, and a lot of sellers, that's their starting point. But time and relationship can help you move off of that point and find where it makes sense. So for us, I feel really good about where we're buying them on the multiple. I feel really good about how we're structuring. We haven't done any major turnarounds because that's important when doing a roll up. Every deal needs to be accretive. If you get such a messy deal, then it's going to eat up a lot of time and energy. But some of these deals were not bankable, Helen. Bankable in the sense that they showed enough profit the last 3 years, and it's on the tax returns, and it's not contorted or hidden in all these ad backs. Like you have to get really creative to show profit. So we're able to have more creative deal structure. We've done royalties. We don't do earnouts. We have the seller, just train, transition, and then retire. And our own equity, seller note, everything's on the table.
Have you ever had to take on outside investment? And are you hoping to sort of never have to do that?
Not at this stage. Not at this stage. If it became like, wow, this deal is the right deal and we need to find a way to make it happen, then maybe. But right now, we've got room to keep doing it on our own. And I like that. For me right now, that I don't want to have more partners and more people to have to answer to right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing place to be where you can finance these transactions, the cash flows of the business you already acquired. I mean, that's incredible. It does just compound so much, especially if you're, not just taking everything out in distributions, which I think is an underrated strategy. A lot of people are just thinking, great, the business is cash flowing 500K a year. That's for me, my lifestyle. And no, this is super smart we were doing. I'm curious now, what does your role look like? We spoke about early on, it was just you doing everything. You bought a business that was doing 700K in revenue, very few employees. Now you have multiple businesses that you've acquired. I'm guessing they're all integrated to some degree. What is your role now? And are you mostly focused on the M&A side? Since you also have so many deals under contract, or what does that look like for you?
Good question. Fortunately for me, I know that other people can do the job way better than I can. And so my roles had to evolve as the company has evolved, and I need to be open to letting go of things and then taking on new things. There's certain stints where I'm doing a bunch of stuff that I just hate doing. And it's that's part of the journey too, is that it's not like I can outsource everything to everyone or follow the platitudes of like only do what you love. There are some times in this game where you got to stretch and do things that are required. But my plan is to not stay there. So as we're growing, I'm able to, have more support with people and systems and delegate that. We're at a critical point for this next year too, where I need to bring in more leadership so that I can again change my role and be more focused on the M&A side and the people side and the key accounts. So it's evolution. I recommend people either one, have some sort of mentor or coach that can help you process where your blind spots are. We use EOS. I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of the entrepreneur operating system.
Yeah, we do too. It's great accountability.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a wheel that spins and you slap it onto your vehicle, whatever flavor of it you want. And that's been key to integration, is it gives everyone a common framework that that we can kind of tweak over time. Like our culture of people and process can evolve, but that kind of stays consistent. So highly recommend that book, Traction and the EOS, and just don't reinvent the wheel. Grab one that works. I know there's a couple other programs or like kind of systems that work. Just pick one and implement it and stick with it. And then the integration piece, that doesn't always have to happen overnight. So that's something that I encourage people to think about, because if you move things too quickly, like you ruin the goodwill of the contracts and clients and the team. So be really thoughtful about your integration plan. Is it really what's mission critical and what can be kind of rolled out over time? So there's some integrations where like I'm not touching anything operationally for like 6-9 months. We're just going to let this thing ride and make sure we don't screw it up.
No, that's incredible journey. I know we're over on time. Final, I guess, final three questions. They're all quick ones. First one, you bought the first business, it's doing 700K in revenue. This was what, 6 years ago now? Is that right? Where are you guys at now in size?
So going to the next year, 20 million run rate,
Wow.
70 people. So it's just been a rocket, not straight up, but like some twists and turns. But yeah, the general trend is pretty amazing. I still can't believe it.
And I guess second question is, for those out there listening to this today who maybe are in the shoes where you were, let's say 7 years ago, where you just got fired, you're like, what do I do next? And are thinking about this path, what do you have to say to them? Any sort of final words of wisdom for folks that are just considering acquisition entrepreneurship?
Gosh, I don't have advice other than sharing my own story. For me, I was curious and willing to take a bet on myself, and at a point where I could take the risks that I needed to take. So I think it takes some self-awareness of your appetite for risk, and also just be voracious learner. I think that's been the key to success, is that at any point in this journey, there were just so many questions. I didn't have a clear path forward, but just being willing to learn just in time from a podcast, listening to other people's story, and they might have something that's an unlock, or reading a business book. So I think it's reevaluating what you want out of life, and are you willing to risk it and go for it, and are you willing to figure it out along the way, is key.
That's great advice. And I guess final question. How many languages do you speak?
Very good question. I wish I spoke American Sign Language. It's the second most in-demand language in the United States, and we have a crisis. We don't have enough qualified ASL or certified ASL interpreters.
That's wild. I would have never imagined. Good to know for everyone listening out there.
Yeah, it's a fantastic language, fantastic subculture that's also all around us, but oftentimes we forget. So if I could learn a language, it would be that one next. Yeah, I probably will start improving that. But Spanish and English, to answer your question, are my two languages.
Spanish, English, and I guess soon to be ASL. So amazing.
Very minimal, but yes.
Well, Jordan, really, really appreciate your time today. I learned a lot. And certainly, other people are definitely going to feel the same way. Really generous of you to share your journey and your experience. So thank you so much. I'm very excited to follow along and see where the next, I guess, 6 years takes you.
Thanks, Helen, for having me on and for sharing all the learnings. I think that's what makes this such an awesome community. Is you can be inspired and figure out problems from other people's stories. So thanks for letting me tell mine.